Real estate versus stocks, the real math, which one will make you more money? Here's a question I get constantly: should I buy a rental property or just put my money in the stock market? And almost every time, the person asking has already made up their mind. They just want confirmation. That's actually the problem. Because when you look at this decision honestly, not through the lens of a real estate guru or a finance influencer, but through actual math and actual behavior, the answer is more uncomfortable than either side wants to admit. So let's talk about it properly. Start with what you're actually comparing. Most people frame this as, my rental earns me $800 a month. That's way better than stocks. But that's not a comparison. That's cherry-picking one number and ignoring everything around it. A true comparison asks, if I take the same amount of money, the same time horizon, and the same level of active involvement, which path grows my net worth more? That question is harder to answer. And the answer changes depending on who you are. Let's start with real estate, because that's where most people's instincts go first. Why real estate feels like the obvious winner. You can see it. You can drive past it. You can borrow against it. When you buy a $300,000 property with $60,000 down, you're controlling 5 times your investment from day one. That's leverage, and it's genuinely powerful. If that property goes up 20% over 5 years, you haven't made 20% on your money. You've made close to 100% on the money you actually put in. That math is real, and it's the core reason real estate has built more visible, tangible wealth for ordinary people than probably any other asset class in history. Add in the cash flow, rent coming in every month, and it starts to feel like the obvious move. But here's where it gets tricky. The costs nobody puts in the headline. Take that same $300,000 property. Say you're renting it for $2,000 a month. That's $24,000 a year. Sounds great. Now subtract the mortgage. At 7% interest on a $240,000 loan, you're paying roughly $1,600 a month. Most of that is interest in the early years, not equity. So you're at $400 a month left. Property taxes, $250 a month in most markets. Insurance, $100 to $150. You're already underwater or barely breaking even before anything breaks. And things break. Roofs. Water heaters. HVAC systems. Plumbing. A single major repair can erase 6 months of cash flow in one afternoon. And if a tenant stops paying, which happens more than anyone advertises, an eviction can take 3 to 6 months, cost you legal fees, and leave the property damaged on top of it. The 1% rule says budget 1% of the property's value per year for maintenance. On a $300,000 home, that's $3,000 a year minimum. Some years it's nothing. Some years it's $12,000 and a very bad week. Then there's your time. Managing a rental property isn't passive income, it's a part-time job. Tenant calls, contractor scheduling, lease renewals, inspections. If you hire a property manager, that's 8 to 10% of rent gone every month. If you don't, you're the property manager. After you account for all of it, vacancy, repairs, taxes, insurance, your time, the actual cash-on-cash return on a typical rental property in most markets today is somewhere between 3 and 7%. Some properties do better. Many do worse. That's not a bad return. But it's not the $800 a month dream either. Now let's look at what index investing actually does. The S&P 500 has averaged roughly 10% annually over the long term. Not every year. Some years it drops 30%. But over 20 or 30 years, that average has held. Take that same $60,000. Put it in a broad market index fund. Add $500 a month, less than what many landlords think they're pocketing. At 10% average annual return, after 20 years, you're looking at somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000. You didn't manage anyone. You didn't fix anything. You didn't lose sleep over a flooded basement. And here's the compounding piece that genuinely surprises people: in the first 5 years, it doesn't feel like much. Your $60,000 becomes $80,000. Okay. In years 15 through 20, the same growth rate adds 6 figures to your account almost automatically. The math accelerates over time in a way that feels invisible until it isn't. But stocks have a real problem too. The behavioral risk people underestimate. When the market drops 35%, and it will, more than once in a 20-year period, most people don't stay calm. They panic. They sell. They wait for it to stabilize. And then they buy back in after it's already recovered. That single behavior, panic selling and late re-entry, destroys more wealth than any market crash actually does. Studies consistently show that the average retail investor earns significantly less than the index itself, simply because of the decisions they make during volatility. Real estate has a strange psychological advantage here. When property values drop, most landlords don't know in real time. There's no ticker. The house still looks the same. The rent still comes in. That illiquidity, the thing people complain about, actually protects some investors from their own worst instincts. So the question isn't just which asset performs better on a spreadsheet. It's which asset you will actually hold through discomfort without making a costly mistake. Where real estate clearly wins. If you find a market where rental income genuinely covers all your costs and still generates real monthly cash flow, not napkin math, but actual take-home after everything, and you're willing to treat it like a business, real estate can outperform. House hacking is the best underrated version of this. Buy a small multi-unit property, live in one unit, rent the others. Your tenants cover your mortgage. You build equity while your housing costs approach zero. That's a structural financial advantage the stock market simply cannot replicate. And 1031 exchanges, where you roll profits from one property into another without triggering capital gains, allow real estate investors to defer taxes in ways that stock investors can't outside of retirement accounts. That compounding of pre-tax dollars adds up significantly over decades. Real estate also gives you something index funds don't: control. You can renovate, raise rents, refinance, add a unit. Your return isn't just tied to the market, it's partly tied to decisions you make. That's a double-edged sword, but for skilled, disciplined operators, it's a genuine edge. Where index investing clearly wins. Simplicity. Diversification. Liquidity. Behavioral safety for most people. If you don't want a second job. If you're not in a market with strong rental fundamentals. If you're starting with less than $50,000 and can't comfortably absorb a major repair cost. If you're the kind of person who will panic sell during a crash, index investing is almost certainly the better fit. The compounding math over 25 or 30 years is staggering, and it requires almost no active skill to capture. That's rare. Most investments require either skill, time, or both. Index investing mostly requires patience. So which one wins? Honestly? The one you'll actually execute well. A mediocre stock investor who stays consistent beats a real estate investor who buys in the wrong market, underestimates costs, and burns out after 3 years. A disciplined real estate investor who understands their numbers beats someone who panic sells their index fund every time the market drops. The math is genuinely close over 20 years when you run both scenarios properly. What separates the outcomes isn't the asset, it's the behavior, the market conditions, the specific numbers of your property, and whether you actually understand what you're getting into before you sign anything.